Welcome into Boxing Scene Today. Well, we've talked a lot about the welterweight division, how the greatest names in boxing history have gone through 147 pounds, but right now on a little bit of a downturn, you could say, but we could see a resurgence after this Saturday's fight in Saudi Arabia. Brian Norman Jr. taking on former 140-pound titleist Devin Haney in what is shaping up to be an outstanding fight. No losses between the two fighters, but Camp's got into a little bit. A little spice going on to help me break it down. I'm in with the champ, Paulie Malignaggi. Paulie, I know you like that. You like a little spice. You like a little flavor. Their camps got into it in Saudi Arabia. It was on social media. A little pushing, a little shoving, a little F you, F that, this kind of thing. I know you like that because it shows the mettle of both guys in a sense. The hunger. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it sells the fight, but especially when it's genuine. And for me, the only way it's really genuine is when you're still trying to accomplish a lot. You still have a lot to prove. Granted, you always have something to prove when you're fighting, but a lot of times you don't see as much of this spice or as much of this competitive edge when guys are already to a point where they've made so much money that it's just like, it's almost like a compromise. Like, hey, we're going to make some money together. Okay, it's cool, but you're fighting. So the competitive edge, the fight meaning so much to the legacy, you're at a point in your career where you're still fighting for that potential legacy. You don't even have a legacy. You're fighting for the potential of legacy. That it brings the savage mentality that personally I feel like makes fights great when guys are at a world-class level and bring savage mentality. And these two guys have that. These two guys, I think, have that chip on their shoulder where there's a lot to prove for one reason or another. And they're also young and, competitive edge-wise and still are young enough to where a lot is still in front of them, so they can still create that legacy, still add to a legacy, however, which way you want to look at it, and I just don't like it when guys have that whole legacy and it's like, okay, whoever wins, loses, okay, it's going to add a little bit to the legacy, but it's not going to ruin your legacy. When you're fighting for the protection of or the ruination of your legacy, there's a savagery. And I feel like these guys are still fighting for the creation of a legacy. So that's why you need to make these fights at this point in people's careers. That's why I always am harp on the fact that these fights can't marinate too long. There's a certain point where you can marinate them enough, but then they got to be made because otherwise you don't have that mental edge, that mental savagery. And listen, I think there's a lot on the line Saturday night, and it's a very, very even fight. And there's a lot of question marks for both guys, and then there's a lot of ups and downs for both guys as far as which way the fight could go.
Now, when you look at Devin Haney, when you talk about being backed against the wall, the fight against Ramirez, of course, the Times Square fight, Turki Al-Sheikh very disappointed in his lack of activity in that fight. You talk a lot, Paulie, about getting in the room, being in the room, right? This idea that you still want to be in that room. When you talk about coming off of, look, we know it was a no contest because of the drug test, but he got, shellacked by Ryan Garcia. A lot of a competitive fight.
Edge of it, the physical part of it, and the mental part of it still stays with you. I really, again, people that know me know how much the whole PD thing irks me, man. And I this is one of the reasons why I cannot respect the boxing media at all, because I still see Ryan Garcia highlights showing the Devin Haney fight. Like, dude, that's not a highlight anymore. The guy failed the drug test. Like, no matter what he did to Devin Haney, that shouldn't count. So it shouldn't even be a highlight. Yes, Devin has to live with the physical aspect of it, even the psychological aspect of sometimes you get hit with certain shots. Now it's like an injury in any sport. All of a sudden you're hesitant.
You're protecting
if you blow out your knee, you're hesitant to take that extra edge, that sprint. You know what I mean? It's the same thing with boxing. You're hesitant to maybe make certain commitments to certain things in the ring, certain moments in the ring when you've been hit with big shots and to have that sort of quote unquote PTSD. I don't like even the fact that fight gets shown in highlights. That fight doesn't count. It's a no contest. Stop using it as Ryan Garcia's only highlight reel of his career because, I know he doesn't have any key wins in his career. I get it. Luke Campbell's probably the best win of his career, but dude, that's not my problem. Like, you shouldn't have to sell me this BS to show me a highlight reel of him hitting Devin all over the place when the fight doesn't count, dude. It doesn't count. But from that aspect, Devin Haney still has to prove now that it hasn't stayed with him. And the JC Ramirez fight, it didn't go a long way in showing us that he has gotten over it. He was able to win just on pure talent with the bare minimum because he's got good legs and he's got good reflex and he got good speed, but he didn't commit to anything. Now, granted, one time right after the fight, I think is forgivable. But I think there's a lot to prove here. And from the other side, Norman, again, that's why I love this fight. Norman has a lot to prove too. Norman was very inconsistent before the Santillan fight. Before the Santillan fight, he was very inconsistent. After the Santillan fight, he's got 2 monster wins as far as stoppages and looking like a killer. But bro, who did he really beat? I mean, those guys were like on the edge of if those guys even deserve a title fight. You know what I mean? So granted, Sasaki was a big puncher, but if I throw this phone from here and I can reach Tokyo somewhere, it'll hit Sasaki. You can miss Sasaki with anything, you know? And the other guy, the Puerto Rican guy, he sucked. That guy sucked. You know, as soon as he got hit, he didn't want nothing to do with the fight. You know, that's not championship caliber opposition where you hit them and they want to go away. Like championship caliber opposition is you hit them and you got to beat the winning mentality out of them. So I don't think Norman as a champion has fought anybody like that yet. Does Haney have that mentality still? He had that in the Garcia fight. As far as, again, doesn't count, but he showed he was willing to get up off the canvas and he was willing to fight. Does he still have that, or has it been beaten out of him? That's all the questions that I have for this fight, and it makes me look forward to it.
When you look at the tactical package of each fighter, what they are capable of doing in the ring, you talk about the boxing ability of Devin Haney. Brian Norman Jr. known more as a puncher, but he does have excellent boxing skills. Who would you give the edge to? There is a bit of an age disparity. Brian Norman Jr., a very young champion. This idea that maybe Devin Haney has a little bit more maturity. Who do you like when you look at the tactics in this fight?
Yeah, I don't think either guy's old. Norman at one point was the youngest world champion in the sport. I don't know if he still is. So, you know, that's a lot of upside.
Haney's 27.
Yeah, a lot of upside from it. That by no means means that Haney's old either. I think this is a good fight again at a good point in their careers. We'll see, because I think this fight, if Haney is sharp, which again it's a big if because we still have to see that post the Garcia issue. If Haney is sharp, I'm curious to see if Norman's boxing, because you say, you know, Norman more was a puncher, but he's got the boxing skills. If Norman's boxing can live up to that level. You know, Norman, prior to Santillan, was a bit inconsistent. Good fighter. At times you can see he's almost can't miss world-class fighter, and that's why he's a world champion. But then there's, you know, the inconsistencies, and you can say, oh, he's been consistent since he was a world champion. But again, against that level of opposition, the consistency only proves so much to me. If he's able to have a good performance against Haney, yeah, you can say, oh, might not be the same Haney. Maybe not. But you know what? It goes a little further. Every time you win as a champion, it goes a little further in convincing all the critics, all the naysayers. When you are a champion, always the microscope's a little bigger. So it can be frustrating, but at the same time, you'll never get more attention than when you're a champion.
I want to tell a quick coaching story. There was a guy I knew who got a broken orbital in a fight. He couldn't spar without doing this. Every time you get hit, he would check to make sure his orbital was all right. He would overreact to punches on that side. And a lot of times, that's kind of the end, right? Yeah. This idea that if you're Brian Norman Jr., do you walk out, throw big punches right in the beginning to see if Devin Haney still has some of that, as you described it, PTSD, if he overreacts to big punches? Do you start in the first round, hey, whether you land them or not, throw those big strikes, get in his head about that?
I think that it might be something to keep in mind, but I don't think you can get overly reckless either, because if Haney's sharp and you come out throwing too many big shots without setting them up, he's going to start clipping you on counters and making you look ridiculous and sort of start taking the play away from you from the early moments. And as a young fighter, you don't want to get the play taken away from you too early, because again, you don't have the experience yet to know how to, you know, sort of take the play back and all the other stuff. It's stuff that you still have to prove. It's stuff you may have to go through, but you don't want to put yourself in that position on purpose. Now, is that the worst idea to try to go for the big shots? I don't think it is, but I think you only try it here and there, and you see if Haney's you gauge Haney's reaction. But if you're not landing, and then you're also being countered, which Haney's very capable of doing, then I think you got to go into your box and say, okay, you know, we gave it a shot. Let's let the fight develop as the way it's supposed to develop. I have a game plan. He's got a game plan. Let me try to devise his game plan. Early on, it's not the worst thing in the world, but I think also if you're Haney getting hit with those hooks in the Garcia fight, I think it was a little bit of a mental laziness. You know, like he was just trying to. I think because Garcia played the role of the crazy guy so well, nobody thought he was going to be sharp, or nobody thought he was going to have that. So Haney, again, despite the fact that the fight doesn't count and all this other stuff, from a tactical standpoint, Haney was still walking the puncher down squared. So you're putting yourself in position to get hit with those hooks. I think that's a lesson learned. I think it's a lesson that Haney probably already knew before that, but he just was mentally lazy, thinking, I'm going to beat this guy anyway. And I think he never let himself adjust. I think now when you have time, separation from the ring, and you have time, I think Haney knows never to make that mistake again. You don't, if your game is boxing and your game is tactical boxing, you never walk down the puncher squared. There's moments to walk down the puncher, don't get me wrong, offsetting him, countering, backing him up, whatever. But if you walk down the puncher squared and off of one look, which was what Haney doing, giving the same look squared up, you're asking for the hook. And so you don't do that. I think Haney probably will never make that mistake again.
When you look at the star quality, the people around Brian Norman Jr. say he handles interviews very, very well. He's very well spoken. He's a likable guy when you put a microphone in front of him. Devin Haney, I wouldn't say crossover big, but certainly a name that even some non-boxing fans would know. Do you see the winner of this fight as maybe the guy carrying the torch for the welterweight division for the foreseeable next couple years? As we said in the open, a little bit of a down right now, but it's, the talent comes back to it. Could the winner of this be kind of the guy for the next few years?
I think so. I mean, is there anybody else that stands out like that? Barrios isn't going to be around much longer. Garcia could also be a guy at welterweight if he's likely going to get the Barrios fight from what we're hearing, right?
Right.
But there's also Conor Ben. There's names in this weight class that are starting to prop up. But I think as far as the class of the welterweight division, as far as the best fighter, I think there's an argument that the winner of this fight would be the best fighter in the welterweight division, and that's regardless of whether Ryan beats Barrios. Rolly's still in there. Yeah. Rolly's always a wild card, man. Rolly can have a horrible performance, and Rolly can surprise you. So Rolly's always a little bit of a wild card. So you can't underestimate him. But then you got Conor and you got Ryan, who are big names, who, in my opinion, still have a lot to prove, but big names. They bring some dynamic into the welterweight division as well. So you can have a little bit of everything, a little bit of spice, like you said, Jimmy. You have the potential winner of this fight stands out as the best guy in the weight class. You got some fame game names with Conor Ben and Ryan Garcia. You have Rolly Romero, who's a bit of a wild card, who on any given night can give anybody trouble, but on any given night can also look like he doesn't belong in the ring at this level. So you never know which version of him you're going to get. He's like that box of chocolates Forrest Gump was talking about.
100%.
And then again, there's other guys in this division coming up. We saw Tiger Johnson on our network. That was on
He looked real sharp.
He looks almost ready for a title fight soon. And I said before the fight, the winner of that fight was going to become world champion. I still believe that. I still believe Tiger Johnson, now that he was the winner and the way he won, it can be a welterweight world champion. So this weight class starting to put together and live up to the expectation of the welterweight division, the way it's supposed to be, the way we've always expected it to be. Because it's been a little bit of time where the welterweight division is, you look at it and you're like, what's going on over here? But it's starting to come together. And I think this weekend's fight goes a long way. I think it probably started with Tiger and Floss, on a little level. Now, this weekend's fight we got, and then the in the new year, if Ryan fights Barrios, you're gonna have also Conor Ben returning, as he said. Rolly will fight somebody. Maybe Rolly will fight Pacquiao. That's been talked about. Who knows? But either way, there's some things shifting, and in a good way in this weight class.
Rounds 1 through 4, rounds 4 through 8, rounds 8 through 12. Where do you think we're going to know what kind of fight this is? It is an early start kind of fight. If Devin Haney looks sharp and is dealing with power punches well, do we know what kind of fight? Is it who pulls away in the middle or who has the gas at the end? What's your thought?
Well, if it starts very tactically, then you're not going to get the answer in the first 4 rounds. If it starts very aggressively, then you're going to get the answer in the first 4 rounds. I can't really predict that because, again, there's a potential
They're both so good.
Well, they're also two very tactical fighters as well. You think of Norman as a puncher. He's a tactical fighter. Haney's a tactical fighter. So if it starts out tactically, I don't think you're going to get a lot in the first 4 rounds. You may need the middle of the fight to start to see the development of a certain advantage on the part of somebody. But if it starts fast, where Norman wants to test some things out of Haney's psyche and maybe test out some big punches, then at that point you'll get the early you'll get an early glimpse of what kind of fight this is going to be. So I think it could start early, or you could know in the first 4 rounds, or you could know in the middle 4 rounds. By the last 4 rounds, if we're still there, we'll know what we got already.
Well, we got an entertaining Saturday as Anthony Yarde, David Benavidez, and of course this welterweight showdown. And when you look at the 147-pound division, we got an emotional spot for that division. It's always been so outstanding. That continues this Saturday. It's going to be a great night of fights. And of course, afterward, we're breaking down all the boxing news right here on Boxing Scene Today. Join us to find out why millions are watching.